Hello everyone, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Lorecrimes. We're back with another episode of Fantasy Fireside. We haven't done one of these in a little while, and we thought it's probably around time we got back to it. So before anything else, Colin, what are we talking about today?
Well, I understand that you might not be as enthused towards this as well as some other factions, but we're going to be talking about the High Elves. Now, Andy, I have two goals today.
Right.
One is it's the main goal. It's what I'm hoping to shoot for. It's to make you go, I get it. Not even I like them. I just hopefully make you go, you know what? I get why people do. I appreciate them as part of the setting.
You want me to be Danny DeVito in that season ender of Always Sunny, where he's just staring at the camera and just goes, I get it. You want that? Okay.
That would be the goal. But there's also, there's the second, post I'd like to hit, which is just even lower. It's just to make you go, I like them more than the Eldar. Which, Eldar fan that I am, even I need to admit, it's not a high bar with the comparison between these two groups of elves.
Oh.
The ones in fantasy are a bit more competent.
Right. Okay. And is it? I assume there's also an element of, I reckon they've got more stories than the Eldar. Or that might be.
They also they certainly do have more stories, but I think one of the main warm-ups I'll give you and everyone listening is that they do scheme. The Eldar love to scheme. The High Elves, they do have some schemes with the, planning things out and making sure things line up according to plan and all that. That at least in 40K never ever works because I don't know. Everyone loves M. Night Shyamalan movies that works at GW, so it's funny when the Farseer who reads the future gets the future wrong.
Yeah.
But the High Elves do that. But they also just will kick you to death. They're not afraid to, get their hands dirty. They don't look at, someone just riding into the thick of battle and go, oh, how primitive, and, and sneer at you. They're probably the first ones in battle.
Okay. Well, I'm liking them a bit more already.
See, they're a bit more palatable, I feel.
Okay. I mean, to be honest, the only real experience I have is that Total Warhammer 3 trailer where it's just like, with the Azur's guide, well, this is no time to be short. And that, they didn't have the best, rep in that trailer. They just seemed a bit, not hoity-toity, but naive and a little bit silly. They didn't choose their words very well.
I will say that's not necessarily a high elf thing. That's just Teclis.
Okay, that's just Teclis.
He makes an appearance in a book, and the first thing he wishes is, damn, I wish my brother was in charge of this. He actually knows how to talk to people. So that was just Teclis.
Okay, right. So I guess without further ado, do we have an itinerary of what we're going to discuss today?
We'll cover through their history a bit. I figured go over the land they live in a little and talk about some characters.
Okay.
That was the rough plan, but as always, if there's a question or something you're like, hey, expound on that a bit, I'm always happy to do so.
Okay.
So we'll start with as just about all the Warhammer factions do, and go back to the old ones, because much like in 40K, the vast majority, well, even more so than 40K actually, because it includes humans, the vast majority of the races you can play on the tabletop in the setting were created by the old ones as a weapon against chaos. And the elves were first. So, as you can guess from them first, the old ones weren't completely satisfied with the project. They never quite found the ultimate weapon. But the design philosophy of the elves was, magic is quite nice. Let's make a race that's quite good at using magic. Mm-hmm. So they made the elves especially good at magic. They made them very long-lived, and so they can properly attune to it. And you might laugh a bit. This might find a bit goofy, but they did make them at least somewhat like inherently kind-hearted. So,
Okay.
it's like, hey, they have like an inbuilt motivation to save the world.
Okay, they're tryhards.
They are kind of the world police, so I can't say too much to that.
I mean, to be fair, the opposite is Nagash. It's like, yeah, you don't want another one of those guys running around. He's just like, nah, I'll do what I want. Don't care who dies.
Yeah, we have one of him, and he nearly ended the world like twice. It's probably best to stick to not doing one of those.
One was enough.
Yeah, one was too much, one might even argue. Not me, of course, but, some.
Yeah.
And there's also a matter of the end times mucking things up a little bit, because their lore kind of implied that the gods they have were survivors from the previous world chaos blew up. But, you can chalk that up to, if you don't like that lore, you can chalk that up to, the usual GW, who knows what's canon, who knows what's true. So they're just worth mentioning, but kind of messy, especially with the Old Worlds release kind of going back to the original. They were all created by the old ones and whatnot. So they, as I said, though, they weren't quite perfect. They were rather frail. You'll find that, high elves have wonderful weapons. They can make wonderful armor, and, they're magic, so they can blow you up. But if you get past that, their main defense against you cutting their head off is really hoping you don't. So, again, they're quite good warriors, quite good wizards. It's just, if you get through what they have to stop you, they're in trouble.
Okay.
With a few exceptions.
First question then. So what other than the fantasy aspect, what differentiates them from the Tau, who are also like, don't come near us, like stay over there, we'll shoot you from afar?
Well, they are quite good in melee. I think at one point they in old fantasy they used to have a rule where every single one of their units had the always strike first. So in melee, it didn't matter whose turn it was, didn't matter what, they were going first in melee. They got the first round off. So it's more like definitely chunkier than the Tau, because they'll practice swordsmanship as well as archery and magic and all that stuff. It's just you could probably beat an elf in an arm wrestling contest.
Okay.
They also they must have screwed up that formula for making them nice, because for one, they were mostly loyal to themselves first, loyal to their people second, and the world as a whole third. So okay. they will save the world. You might need to convince them how it will affect them first.
Yeah, we need to we'll save the world, but only if we deem it a world-ending threat. Otherwise, you have to prove it to us. Yeah, okay. That reminds me of something. I can't think of what it is.
To be fair, it is Warhammer, so the amount of world-ending threats, they come along pretty frequently, so they are out there quite often. It's just that, you need to convince them to leave their island first. And they're a little bit battle hungry. They like adventure. They like going to find glory, all that stuff. So, not necessarily evil, but you will... there's a bit of a schism that we'll talk about, because at this point, there's only elves. There's no high elves, wood elves, dark elves. They're just all elves. But the old ones didn't, they were like, well, this wasn't great, but we can, being pragmatic, we can still get some use out of them. Being, kind, depending on how you want to look at it. They weren't just going to exterminate a whole race because they weren't perfect. So they gifted them the donut, Ulthuan, in the middle of the Warhammer, not Atlantic Ocean. And it was basically the Garden of Eden. It was just the most lovely place to live, where winter would come around and it was a 1 degree drop in temperature. It was lush, verdant forests and plains with all these, the friendly wildlife. It was just Snow White, every Disney cartoon that's, with just nature and love, and it's all great. So the old ones go about, making other races, dwarves, men, ogres, all that stuff. The elves, for their part, just can't really blame them for this because chaos has not appeared yet. Just kind of chill on Ulthuan. Just, they just hang out on their nice island.
Just drinking wine, having a cheese board. Like, yeah, we're just enjoying the time. Yeah. Oh, do you want to come to a barbecue? Yeah, I would actually. Oh, that sounds really nice.
Pretty much. I mean, they really. This was at the point there was not really any problems in the Warhammer world because the old ones were still around. So, like, the 3 races that weren't chaos that could potentially bother them just got slapped down. Like, the orcs do exist at this point. They're not doing much to anyone because there's still trillions of lizardmen to kill them if need be. So they do have armies. They do have some stuff they have nowadays, but because the old ones did want them as weapons, but they don't really use them. Like they're completely untested because there's nothing to test the army against. Chaos isn't here yet, and nothing else is a problem. So they really just hang out. There's not many records of this time. But the position of Everqueen, which is a very important one, it's the living incarnation of one of their gods, does exist. But aside from this, like we don't know the names of any of the Everqueens of this time. We don't really know too much about the kingdoms. We just know it was nice. It was like the Eldar Empire before things got too bad, or Dark Age of Technology Humanity before the Age of Strife. It's just they're just chilling. Then things take a turn for the very bad because the great catastrophe occurs and chaos is here now.
Aww.
Now, the elves, to give them their credit, were one of basically 2 of the old ones' races to make a concerted effort against chaos. It was them and the lizardmen. The dwarves, for the most part, just kind of shut the doors to their mountain holds and said, "Good luck, everyone." Not all of them.
We're going for a beer. Have fun.
And again, I can only blame them so much because if I saw a bloodthirster outside, I'm not volunteering to go fight it.
Yeah,
but
it's like when you're indoors and it's raining outside, and you see people in like their raincoats suffering a bit, and their brollies are getting blown out in the wind, and you're there cozy indoors going, "Oh well, I'll just enjoy." Oh, it's nice when you're inside and you can see the rain, and you're like, "Oh, I'm nice and warm and cozy." Oh, yeah. It sucks that they're not. Oh well.
It's like, I appreciate, someone needs to go out there and do stuff. I'm not that someone.
Yeah. Not today.
Mankind was all over the place. The humans and the tribes that would, become the Empire, Bretonnia, Kislev, were hiding in caves and hoping the scary monsters would go away. The Nehekarans were fighting alongside their gods to clear chaos. So, other people were making an effort, but the elves and the lizardmen were the only, races going all right, let's fight them. To then not give the elves their credit, those armies, like I said, were very untested. It was a very one-sided affair. It'd be like 1 demon for every 5 elves. Or, no exact figures were given, but what we do know is that it was not a great time to be an elf. But there was 2 things, actually, they had going for them. Or should I say 2 people. There was the elf Anarian, who... what is the best way to describe... Take Sigismund and give him pointy ears.
Okay.
Or maybe Angron is a better
Oh,
one.
okay.
He just was really good at killing demons, to the point that he rallied their entire army. Like, he'd show up, and then the demons would be gone. He's their mythical hero figure. Like, he is. He's the guy. Even 6,000 years later, they all go into battle chanting his name because he was that good at killing demons.
Yeah, he's not like a low-key Gotrek. He's like a high-key. No, I'm going to flaunt it, and everyone's going to think I'm great.
Indeed.
Rather than, I just want to die. I just want to die. And you're like, Gotrek, no, we love you. Please.
Anarian didn't quite want death that bad. Well, yeah, we'll get to that. And then there was the other person, his buddy, Kalidor Dragon Tamer, who, one, you can probably guess from the name.
That's a good name.
Friends with dragons. 2, he's one of those wizards that just kind of blinks and you just disappear from reality. So he was also good at, getting things organized, getting the wizards, doing what they got to do. And together they kind of started pushing the demons back. Not zero casualties, but when these guys started getting out, it was very much oh hey, the rest of the elves realized we could win, and we've got some practice fighting now after the demons were kicking the hell out of us after all this time, so we're good to go. So Kalidor, mixing things up a bit. Anarian, after a little bit, kind of lost track of things. Can't blame him too much because as far as he knew, demons killed his wife and children.
Oh, that's not good.
It's not one of those things where he started faltering. It's like, oh, you're just tired. When it's like, no, he was going through some stuff.
Yeah. Especially going from the whiplash of like, oh, everything is lovely and lush and beautiful, and it's like, oh no, why am I family? Oh no.
Yeah,
Chaos sucks.
It was not great. And to top it off, he got his shoulder to cry on in the form of Morathi, who, I've brought her up before. You know my opinions on that.
I'm assuming you would mind having her for a shoulder to cry on.
I would murder people
among other
for
things.
it. Indeed. But she, even from the beginning, she wasn't quite right. I think at age 11, she started getting visions of the great catastrophe and demons showing up, and no one believed her. And somewhere in getting lost in the sauce of that, she might have got a little bit too interested in the intricacies of chaos.
I like the idea that she started off, because I know the attire of the High Elves is quite regal with like golds and nice linen, like whites and blues, and then like slowly she starts getting a bit more hot topic. And you're like, there's something up with Morathi. I don't know what it is. She's wearing a lot of like low cut like black shirts and getting piercings and like black lipstick. And you're like, something going on there. Oh, it's just a phase. Don't worry, it's just a phase.
Yeah. She did. That is to be fair to her. Before she goes on to be somewhat responsible for like 80% of the wrongs in this planet.
Ooh.
She was, like the story of Cassandra in Greek myths. Like she can see the future perfectly. No one believes her. That was kind of her. She's like, there's going to be demons. There's going to be problems. Everyone was like, oh, you silly Morathi. Don't worry about it. So don't blame her for being a bit bitter, but a little bit too interested in chaos. Very unhealthy interest in Anarian. So between that and the fact that he thinks his first wife and kids, who he really loved, are gone, he stopped pushing things forward as much as he should have. Kalidor, though, who does not get enough credit, kept things going, him with some secret help from the Lizardmen that most of the elves don't know about, so they get angry if you bring it up and imply they didn't do it all on their own. Created the magical vortex in the center of Ulthuan, which just drains magic away. Because it's like 40k, just replace warp psyker powers with just straight up magic. If there's enough ambient magic in the world, demons can just kind of show up. So the vortex was really good at getting them away. Like it's just like they physically can't form because there's not magic seeping into the world itself. It just drains it back into the realm of chaos. So Kalidor pulled a good one there. He and some other wizards bound themselves like outside of time within the vortex. It's like they're trapped in amber, like a mosquito from like Jurassic Park.
Okay.
To just basically keep that thing going forever. The other thing helping was Anarian. Kalidor snapped him out of his funk eventually, which maybe he shouldn't have because he immediately went to grab what's known as the Sword of Cain, which cursed his bloodline forever with just incredible battle lust and every now and then health problems. And overall, probably should not have picked up that sword. To the point that there's lore that even the Chaos Gods themselves, along with every other god in the setting, were telling him it's not worth it. And it's not
even
written.
They were like, I'm not touching that thing. Ugh, yuck.
And the thing is, it's like it's not written in a way where it's like the Chaos Gods were afraid. Like they didn't want him to grab the sword because it turns him into an incredible warrior. But they are also like, dude, we're awful, and take us for our word. It's not worth it.
Right, you swing that for 10 minutes, the hangover is insane. Just leave it alone. It's like, no, I need it.
Pretty much. And like Cain was the only one going, hey man, you know what'd be really funny if you grab that sword over there. And even
Cain was basically just going, hey, bud, don't be a pussy. Do it. I dare you. I dare you, Cain. No. Do it, pussy. What?
And even in some lore, even Cain was like, dude, don't do that. That's my sword, and it's going to give you one hell of a hangover.
Yeah.
Don't do that. So, but Anarian did that. Another sad moment with Morathi that we'll probably go in more. Before he left to do that, she told him he loved him, and he just looked at her and left.
Oh, wow. Dick move.
As much as, I both say horrid things about Morathi and also admit she's just the worst. It's kind of sad.
Yeah. Was that the straw that broke the camel's back? Was like, I can fix her. And then that happens like, oh, no, I can't. Oh, no.
It definitely didn't help her mentality going forward. I don't know if it was the
like
straw
that
that broke
pause.
her, but it ensured there was no fixing her after that.
Yeah.
But he goes to grab the Sword of Cain, fights 4 greater demons at once with the help of his dragon. He had a dragon mount. It's really not that important. It's just cool to have. Was critically wounded, but not so wounded that he couldn't fly halfway across a continent. And because I've mentioned before, the Warhammer world is like twice as big as Earth. Really a full continent. Put the Sword of Cain back into its altar, leave his armor behind, and he just kind of vanished. With that, the Great Catastrophe was over, more or less. There was probably a little bit of cleaning up you had to do, but but yeah, that's finished. The elves are reeling. The lizardmen are worse off, honestly, but everyone's alive. So sometimes you just got to take what you can get.
To be honest, the lizardmen don't seem like they'd be that phased by it. It's like, yeah, acceptable losses. We just do this. This is our thing. We don't mind.
They didn't really care about their own casualties. It was more the fact that, the old ones are gone now, and we're not entirely sure on what they wanted us to do now. So we got to figure that one out.
Consult the sacred texts. And then that was what they did.
Literally, they did exactly that. But for the elves, they went out, and they had a bit of a golden age after this. Things were actually going good. At some unspecified point, I believe, I could not find an exact date for it in the the Warhammer calendar. Anarians, well, his wife never ended up coming back, but her kids did, forming one of the bloodlines of Anarian. Unfortunately for everyone in the world, he had a kid with Morathi named Malekith, who you will remember from me and Eli constantly arguing over who's the real Phoenix King. Not him.
Yeah,
it's not him. I'm
sure I've seen images of him, and he has like a very elaborate headdress helmet thing, and I'm like, that's a lot of curvy spikes. If I'm remembering it right.
Come to find out soon, he is very much just Darth Vader. He's edgier Anakin.
But he's got more limbs that aren't robotic.
To be fair, there's no robot part of him. Aside from that, though, honestly, not much better than Anakin.
Yeah.
But for Malekith's part, we'll give him his due credit. Early on, he was a pretty cool dude. He was an adventurer, wanted to do proud by his dad, because those are some big shoes to fill. The guy who saved the world.
Oh, that'd be terrible. Could you imagine growing up and it's like, people talk about, my dad was a great rock musician. Oh, my dad was a CEO of a company. My dad literally saved everyone in the world once. Oh, good luck matching like a 10 for that. Yeah, great. No pressure. No pressure.
Yeah. But, again, to his credit, he did some good stuff. The High Elves at this point were spreading colonies throughout most of the known world, pretty much. Bretonia was pretty much just High Elven colonies. A lot of the Empire was. Some of the New World, or the New World, the New World equivalent, the North American equivalent, Lustria, even some places in Nehekara and Cathay. They were all over the place. And Malekith was a lot of the time heading these efforts. He was an adventurer at heart. And he even helped make the friendship between the elves and the dwarves. Because they were buddies at this time. They were pretty much the only other civilized races that they had found. Because aside from Nehekara and Cathay, mankind was mostly just still cavemen.
Yeah.
And the dwarves and elves didn't have too much contact with Cathay. And Nehekara, I believe this was... I was going to say, aside from Cetra, there wasn't too much contact. And if they did have any contact, with Cetra, the elves and the dwarves, that usually ended in a decisive defeat for the people who weren't Cetra. So they probably weren't the biggest fans of him.
Was it the case, because I know you said before that the dwarves basically just went, shut the door, good luck, they just opened it a creak, and they were just no hard feelings, and they're like, I can't stay mad at you. Come here, give us a pint.
Probably not far off. I don't know the exact, I don't think there was an exact time given for this is when the elves and dwarves found each other, but I imagine, if anyone knew about that, how the dwarves just kind of went, probably something along those lines. And really, this is kind of elven history for a while. Trade with the dwarves, make friends. They help decorate each other's homes. Like the dwarves made gifts for the elves. The elves, I think specifically, the passage I always remember is it goes to the dwarf capital, Karazak Harak. The ceiling of it is made to look like the nighttime sky, and it's just filled with thousands and thousands of sapphires and gems that just twinkle with magic. Mm-hmm. Which is just a beautiful mental image. But the elves did that for the dwarfs. Just, things are going well for once. Malekith was even best friends with the dwarf high king, to the point that he was allowed to be present on his deathbed.
Yeah, and, I remember there was a bit of crossover when we did our dwarf episode a while back.
Yep. And he swore with King Snorri Whitebeard was his name that the elves and dwarves would be friends forever. He made an oath, no. Andy. He made an oath on his deathbed, the strongest oath you could make. That goes poorly, because
don't worry about that. It's fine. Just don't worry about it.
On one of his adventures, Malekith ends up going a little bit too far north, and finds this ruined city, and a crown within it, or a circlet, I believe, crown. Same difference. He finds a magical headdress that is. Just incredibly evil. It's in this place, I believe. It's described. It's not a human. It's not elven. It's not a dwarf city. We don't know what this is, but it's in ruins and it's evil.
It's like the tiara version of the layer blade. It's in a weird temple and it's strange. Oh, put this on. What could go wrong?
I was thinking the One Ring, but that's a way better comparison. The layer blade. Because I don't think it's not specifically Slaanesh. It's just kind of generically chaos evil.
Yeah, because the lair blade was from the lair species who are aquatic serpents, and they got this weird water city, and they go, wow, that's weird. Look at this big bundle of corals. Oh, that's a weird looking sword. Yoink. Oh no. Horus Heresy time.
Where it's like that, where the end result either way is, why did you pick that up? Why did you do that?
Yeah.
But he grabs that, and he's not evil yet, but now we're definitely on the path. And further not helping things is he goes back home, and the elves are electing the Phoenix King. This is basically at the time, new position, just to help lead the elves, And they Malekith obviously was like, hey, I'm the son of the guy who saved the world. I helped make us good friends with the dwarfs. I've been out and about there. I'm adventuring. I think I'd be a good candidate. They do not vote for him.
What?
Not strictly speaking, because they dislike the guy. He was loved throughout Ulthuan at this point. Still, it was more so the fact that his skill set kind of started and ended at sword point. So, not the best peacetime ruler is my point.
Yeah. Every peace talk he goes to, he's like holding the hilt of his sword. It's chill, dude, just chill. He's no, it's fine. I'm here for peace talks. Just seeing him slowly, just move his hand moving further down the shaft. It's no, don't draw your sword.
Yeah.
Peace talks. Remember, peace talks. Oh God, he's killed the High King of the. Oh no.
It's Malekith. We appreciate you're good at stabbing things. We need things done that don't involve stabbing right now. We're full on the stab quotient.
Yeah.
So they elect a guy named Belshazzar instead, who Uh, it was a cool dude. You know, he was not a no superb warrior, anything like that. But you know, it was good for the time, for what they needed. They just needed kind of a chill guy who would, you know, oversee government kind of shit.
Yeah, family man, pays his taxes, does a bit of charity work, volunteers at a soup kitchen sort of deal. Like, oh, he's a good guy. He's a good guy.
Yeah. Malekith, for his part, you know, he at least, it depends on, again, which lore you're reading. He might have been lying about taking it honorably. He might have been telling the truth and it's like, you know what, that's fair. You voted for someone else to be the king. I can accept that. I prefer to think, you know, he was still a pretty chill guy at this point. He was like, you know what, that's fine. Really just doing it, you know, in honor of my father, who was the first Phoenix King. And, you know, this is when we're doing it official. This is, you know, mostly for Dad. But, you know, he was like, you know, no worries. Mama Marathi, though, was not happy Malekith didn't get to be Phoenix King. And coupled with that and herself just being, you know, a little bit off her rocker, she began the pleasure cults. Kind of like, again, the Eldar. Some things were going a bit wrong of the Slaanesh variety. And while Malekith was out and about, at one point they sent him a message like, dude, you need to come home. They are ruining everything.
I just like the idea that Marathi turned into a Karen, and she's there with like her friends drinking a bottle of rosé and going, it's bullshit, my son should have been elected king. It's rigged, and I'm going to talk to the manager. It's like, chill. He's fine with it. And then...
Not a horrible comparison. Malekith's out and about. They bring him back home, and he's like, all right, I'm going to deal with the pleasure cults. And this is going to be the last times I'm going to say it. To his credit, he does just start doing that, you know, initially no strings attached. He finds, you know, the pleasure cults worshipping Slaanesh and, you know, excess and all that stuff, and he gets rid of them. Until he finds the leader of those pleasure cults, which is Mommy Dearest. And again, initially, he does like, I'm taking you in. You're the leader of this. You are going to trial and probably getting your head taken off. And they do fight, which Malekith wins. But she convinces him to hear her out. And that, hey, Malekith, you're the one doing all the work. Maybe you should be Phoenix King. You know, between that, just, you know, general promises of power, you know, maybe tugging on the family loyalty a bit. Pulls him to his side, as well as a whole lot of elves, because, again, a very popular guy, that Malekith. He just came back to help out. He's been getting the high elf name and colonies going around the world. A lot of people think he should be in charge. And then their plan kind of completely falls flat, because their plan to get Malekith, you know, to be Phoenix King is to assemble all of the high elven, you know, lords, like the smaller kings, the princes, accuse Belshazzar, the current Phoenix King, of actually being the leader of the pleasure cults. And their evidence, as far as I could tell, was to go, dude, trust me, I'm Malekith.
Yeah.
Believe it or
I have
not.
A question, by the way.
Oh, yep.
So, like, Slaanesh, because obviously in 40k universe, Slaanesh is birthed by the hubris of the Elves, or the Eldar. So I guess in this universe, Slaanesh just always existed as, like, a primordial force, and...
Yeah.
It's all... Yeah, okay.
They've always been around. Slaanesh does prefer elf souls a bit more, because they are kind of like the Eldar, and that, you know, they can, like, emotions are a little bit stronger for them. But it's not like it is for 40k, where, you know, they die and it's just like, well, you either had a Spirit Stone or it's insta-Slaanesh time.
Yeah.
There's a couple different options they have when they die. Slaanesh will, if they don't, like, take some kind of precaution or get to a Waystone quickly enough as a ghost, will get them. But it's not like auto, just like, and yep, it is, you go to Slaanesh.
I just had an image in my brain of in 40k, Slaanesh is basically Scorpion from Mortal Kombat. When you guys just like, get over here, just feel the chain dig into you, like, oh no, please no.
In Mortal Kombat 10, I was a Scorpion man.
Oh, nice. I played him a lot in 8.
I didn't play much of 8. I think like 9 and 10 were the first ones I really played. Like I played the first couple on like an old like Nintendo or something that could run it that my dad had. But like 9 and 10 were the first ones I really played. Scorpion was so much fun in that game.
I think the first one I properly played was Deadly Alliance with like the Dragon King, and or is it? It's the one after. It's like Mortal Kombat Extinction. It was the one that had an RPG in it, and you played as a character called Shujinko, and he was like a character that could do every combat style in his campaign. You had to like play as every character through him, and it was like a weird. It was really weird because it was like an actual like linear RPG. I was like, this is strange, but I'm like 15, and it's pretty good for me. But yeah, it's been a while since I played Mortal Kombat. Anyway, I've derailed the conversation.
No worry. But yeah, Malekith's proof of the Phoenix King being the true traitor was to go, trust me, bro, I'm him. No one believed him, so instead he forced the Phoenix King to drink poison, and went, okay, I'll prove that I'm him, and walked into the Fire of Assyrian, because this all took place at his shrine. Now, the Flame of Assyrian is where the Phoenix Kings walk through to test whether or not they are truly, worthy of the position. If they are, they come out unharmed. If they aren't, they burn to a crisp.
Yeah.
Malekith was Kentucky Fried Phoenix King when he came out. At End Times lore went, actually, Malekith just needed to hang out in the fire for a couple more seconds to really prove he was determined enough for it, which is stupid. But thankfully, Age of Sigmar, of all places, retconned this, because Morathi was... it was weird. We could, at some point, maybe talk about this later. Morathi was inside of Slaanesh looking for the souls of Phoenix Kings. Because they all had a bit of Assyrian's power in them. So that kind of retconned, like, actually, all the Phoenix Kings after them were just pretenders. Nope, that's not true, because if they were, Morathi wouldn't be digging for their souls because they had godly power in them.
I'm just thinking, Morathi went inside of Slaanesh, and it's like, how did Morathi get in? Don't ask questions you don't want to know the answer to.
She had a magical lantern.
Oh, that explains it.
But that's irrelevant. What is relevant is Malekith, bad juju.
Yeah.
So he burns to a crisp. A bunch of assassins jump the remaining lords assembled. Morathi and some others pull Malekith's burnt ass out of the frying pan, and he gets that armor you see him wearing, which is he can't take it off because I believe it's also sustaining him. So when I was saying he's Darth Vader, I wasn't kidding about that. He's a magical, evil wizard wearing armor with a face mask that he can't take off, who has also been burnt to a crisp, which is the reason he's in the armor.
Yeah.
So it's just full-blown Civil War time, which goes a little bit well at first for the Dark Elves, who are now forming. They're now becoming the Dark Elves proper. Stops going well for them. Malekith, in a hissy fit, undoes the vortex, which there's not even, like, he tries to do it, he just does it. But if you'll remember, I said there was a whole bunch of high elf mages trapped inside of it to keep it going, including that Kalidor guy, who's a very strong wizard. So it was kind of like it worked too well, because it worked, and then all the people inside of it just briefly came out to kick his ass, and then they just remade it.
It's like the opposite of that meme where it's like, task failed successfully. It's like, no, task succeeded unsuccessfully. Like, oh no.
Yeah.
We did it too well.
It's like, I've undone the vortex. Ah, yes, there were people in that aren't happy with me for doing that.
Yeah.
So the Dark Elves, their homes, by the way, were magical castles that could just, the entire landscape, they just lifted them up with magic and turned them into black arcs, floating battleships that they now use to raid and enslave people. But that'll more about that for the Dark Elf time. For the High Elves, this event was known as the Sundering, because one, it sundered their people into two, and for two, it literally sundered Ulthuan. Like, half of the island sank.
Yeah.
Because Ulthuan, for reference, isn't an island. Islands come up from the sea floor. It's like a boat. It floats. Like, it's a floating island that probably it only goes down like a mile or so, and then there's just ocean beneath it.
To be fair, I do wonder if the designers, when they first came up with the fancy map, they were just like, that's a lot of like space that's not doing anything. Should we just put something there? Yeah, just put a big donut. Yeah, that looks better. Especially if it's like double the scale of like the template of Earth itself. Like, that's a lot of like nothing. And especially with like games and stuff, like, what are you going to do? Oh, sail over that big expanse of not much. Oh, that's much better. Put a big game.
Yeah. This would be a great place for a Walmart. But yeah, they're really not great for the High Elves. But they're still hanging on. Golden Age is definitely coming to an end, but it's going to get a little bit better. And with this, they did still win though. The High Elves, well, now the High Elves, I should say, because now there's a split, did ultimately reign victorious. And they kind of, focus on rebuilding, get a new Phoenix King in charge because Malekith kind of poisoned the last one. And you go back, train with the dwarves, all that good stuff. There are some cultural differences, we'll say, bubbling between the dwarves and the elves. The elves are very regal, very prim and proper. The dwarves will chug a keg of beer, then burp in your face and laugh. There's some differences bubbling, but they're still more friendly than not. But Malekith's latest plan to do away with the elves, the high elf pretenders as he sees them, is to break his oath and get the dwarves and elves to kill each other.
Oh no.
So what he does is, because there's no physical difference between dark elves and high elves. Dark elves are a bit paler, but that's more so just because they live in the Arctic. He just has some dark elves dress up as high elves, murder some dwarf caravans, and make it look like the high elves did it.
Oh.
Now, the dwarf high king at the time, Gotrek Starbreaker, and by God, that's not one of the coolest names.
Yeah.
One I've ever heard, and two, of course his name is Gotrek. It's not the same one, but
No.
it is still a Gotrek.
I feel like Starbreaker should be a Star Wars character or something. Just or a ship name, That's the Starbreaker there. Oh.
It is a pretty sick name. But, things not great. I should also add that the Phoenix King, immediately after Belshazzar, who got poisoned, reclaimed the last bit of Ulthuan from the, the Dark Elves, was nearly killed by a bunch of Dark Elves, and just jumped into the sea in full armor so they couldn't capture him. Which isn't a super important detail, I just thought it was that's a brave death.
Yeah, I hope, to be honest, they did after the battle try and get the armor back. They're that's quite important armor there. Should we just dig him out and give him a proper burial? Yeah, might as well.
I couldn't find info on that. I think they might have, but it wasn't Anarian's armor. The Phoenix King doesn't get that. His bloodline does. So, maybe they got it. Maybe they didn't. Who knows? But I only brought him up because the Phoenix King after him is Kalilor II, the warrior, who has a very long list of names. You know what? Let me see if I can actually find it. None of them are pleasant nicknames. Because the elves and dwarves alike both think he's the biggest idiot on the planet. Because
what kind of name is Kalilor II? Ugh.
Well, he's already just a sequel to the better Kalilor. And he was a bit arrogant. For the elves, even elves, he was arrogant. And with the Dwarf High King just sent an embassy hey, man, why did a bunch of elves just kind of, murder our trade caravans? He was just asking at this point. All he wanted was an answer. Very polite, no, not overstepping, just hey, man, what happened? Kalilor told his diplomat to fuck off. Because the dwarves weren't really aware of what was going on with the elves, and they didn't really get it because the idea of a dwarf civil war was just completely out of their mind. They could not. It's just not a dwarf thing to do. Don't mention the chaos dwarves. If you do that, you're going to get killed by a dwarf. But aside from that, dwarves going to war with other dwarfs just is unheard of. So they're hey, what happened? Kalilor II tells them to go away. The dwarfs get angry, so they're all right, now you're going to tell us what happened and just pay us gold for, what you stole and who you killed, which I think is, again, still a pretty reasonable request. As far as he knows, elves killed dwarves, and the king of the elves is being a pain about it. So again, he's not demanding blood, he's not demanding retribution, he's just hey, pay us, because at this point, I'm kind of assuming you did it. And
Yeah,
Kalidor
it's like,
2
yeah.
wasn't helping that assumption.
It's like if you were in the playground when you're 10 and some gang went into your locker during break and stole your shiny Charizard Pokemon card, and you're like, all right, I just want enough money to buy another one because it's a rare card. I'm not going to punch you in the face after that during break time. Just pay up and say, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah.
Hate those kind of people.
Now, before I tell you what he does, I think I'll read through some of these nicknames. Kalidor 2, also known as the Friendless, the Irredeemable, the Goat Lover, the Goat Warrior. There's 2 different nicknames for him that implies he has sex with goats. That's just funny. The Dark Fearer, the Frightened of Loud Noises, and my personal favorite, the Pointlessly Tall.
That's very dwarven, isn't it?
Yeah. His next action was to shave the beard of the dwarfs' diplomats and send them home.
Oh, no.
Which for the dwarfs is... This isn't just crossing the line, this is leaping over it, doing a funny dance, and then kicking a dwarf in the nuts.
This isn't a crime against a dwarf, this is a crime against all dwarves.
Yeah. This is directly into the book with you now. And now starts, depending on who you're asking, the dwarfs call it the War of Vengeance, the elves call it the War of the Beard, and it just tears their empires apart, because even with, the High Elf Civil War, the elves had colonies all over the place, they were rebuilding fairly well, there was still a couple hundred years between all these different travesties. They were still pretty powerful. The dwarfs, also, still pretty powerful. This was before both the Slann and the Skaven ruined the mountain ranges they lived in and, burned their homes to the ground. So the dwarves were still powerful, the elves still powerful. They just go to war with each other, and it's World War I, because they're both kind of worldwide empires at this point. And it decimates each of them. The dwarves do eventually kill Kalidor 2, and even steal the Phoenix Crown, which they never gave back to the elves. And I gotta be honest, I can't blame them that much for it.
I wonder where they keep it. Do we know where they keep it?
I think it's in, their capital city, it's in a hoard in Karazakarak. They just have it screw you,
you know
elves.
what would be the ultimate insult? If they put it on the royal latrine. It's we'll put it just above the flusher. Just put it there. Just to rub the salt in the wound.
That would be great. I think they just kind of keep it in a vault, but yeah, they don't give that one back.
No.
Problem is, this was a very long war with a whole lot of casualties on each side, and because the elves are now weakened, Malekith is now is a great time to invade Ulthuan. So the High Elves, this is when they kind of start becoming more insular than before, like how I was mentioning, you gotta convince them to go save the world. Part of that is because it was 3 consecutive kicks to the balls between the Great Catastrophe, the Sundering, the War of the Beard, and now Malekith and the Dark Elves are invading Ulthuan. So they recall all of their colonies they had around the world. They're you need to come defend the homeland. A lot of them do come home. Some of them don't and become Wood Elves, which we'll, get to another time. But now we have all 3 elf races, and the High Elves, for their part, are just hiding. Or not hiding, but they're we're sticking to ourselves now. We keep trying to leave the donut. We keep getting the crap kicked out of us. Fine. Yeah. We will just stay home.
Yeah, just weathering the storm, isolationists. We're fine here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they do repulse Malekith. But like I said, after this, they're far more insular than they were. They go to war with the Dark Elves pretty frequently. They're never at peace. In fact, I should say, in 40K, the Dark Eldar and the Craft Worlds, they don't like each other. But at least, correct me if you feel I'm wrong on this. There's a general attitude of, at least among the Craft Worlders, we're not going to go bother you. If you decide to raid us, we're going to fight back, but we're not going to pick a fight.
Yeah, fight the humans, fight the do anything other than bother us. Don't worry.
Yeah, and worst comes to worst, they will work together.
And not being funny, the Eldar are also we've been through an extinction level event. we're clinging on by our teeth at this point.
Yeah, they're like, we have better things to do. A high elf would rather backflip into Slaaneish's open arms than so much as say hello to a dark elf. Like, the levels of hatred present are infinitely higher. Like, it is... This isn't just like we're going our separate ways and those ways just happen to be opposed. This is, I am actively going to do everything I can to murder you. And this starts what I like to call the high elf cycle, which is how it goes. Something catastrophic happens. The high elves deal with it. There is a period of rebuilding. Something catastrophic happens. The high elves go to deal with it. There's a period of rebuilding, and then on for a couple thousand years. For example, Malekith quite frequently likes to invade, so they'll deal with that. Every now and then, chaos and orcs cause problems. They'll go deal with that. At one point, they were even, like I've said, they need to feel it's worth it. They felt it was worth it, so they sailed out to Nehekara after they were all Tomb Kings to build some waystones that would help magic drain in the vortex more efficiently. They do go out and help the world out quite frequently. It's just that in between those big events, they're sticking at home. The world seems very commonly to tell them, go away. The bloodline of Anarian continues. They are cursed, as I said. They all really like that sword of Cain. None of them grab it, but it's always like they're tempting them. And that's high elf history for a while. There are, obviously, little lore blurbs that are interesting to focus on, but overall, you can sum up high elf history like that. It's a constant cycle of very briefly get to rebuild, and then shit hits the fan, so we need to go out and save it. So, if you've not any questions, I figured I'd talk a little bit about what Ulthuan is, because they went all in on describing it, all the different kingdoms and whatnot.
Yeah, go for it. I suppose the only thing I was going to ask is, I know we mentioned that, originally the lizard men fought with the, have they just been keeping low as well? Just we're not bothered about the elves. They're doing their own internal struggle. And I'm assuming also humanity's quite, irrelevant at this point, and they're just getting their feet.
Around now, humanity is actually kind of coming into its own. Ignoring the Tomb King. The Tomb Kings did the opposite. They got nagashed. But humanity, by this point, Sigmar has been born and the Empire is formed. But like I was saying, the elves at this point are still very insular. They will go deal with a problem the world is facing and then immediately go back home. They don't view anything else as worth their time at this point. Which is equal parts arrogance, I will admit, and also they keep going through horrible times of, just everything going wrong. They need a minute to chill, and the world doesn't like to give them those very often, so when they have the chance, they take it. But yeah, unbeknownst to them, largely, the nations of men are building Kislev, the Empire, Bretonia. But we'll kind of get to... we'll get to that in a moment. Mm-hmm. Actually, I can do... Actually, yeah, I'll do that, and then we'll talk about Ulthuan a bit.
Okay.
We come to modern Warhammer Fantasy, as it was. Or at least approaching modern Warhammer Fantasy, and the current heirs of Anarian are born, Tyrion and Teclis. Tyrion is cool warrior guy. He's very charismatic. He's very personable. He's an incredible warrior to the point that some people think he's just outright Anarian reborn. Not even just his bloodline. It's like, he's back. Big A is returned. Funny enough, Matt Ward, of all people, actually gave him a bit more character depth by making him, like every now and then, Tyrion has a bit of a mood swing problem. He'll be very friendly, talking with you, lovely guy, and then he punches through your wall and starts demanding to go murder dark elves. He's a bit of a mood swing problem. Teclis, for how he got the Curse of Anarian, is he has cholera. He has magical tuberculosis. He needs to take potions constantly, which wasn't discovered until a decent ways into his life. He was just bedridden for most of his life. There's in Age of Sigmar, of all places, Nagash is tormenting Teclis with memories of the old world. And one of the memories he gets is just Teclis is watching Tyrion, out there training and making friends, and he's just sitting in his bed sick. Man, this is depressing. Teclis' role is to get the shit kicked out of him at every given chance.
Oh.
But Malekith invades again, as he does. Nearly destroys Ulthuan, but Tyrion saves the Everqueen, saves Alariel, the current Everqueen. Teclis registers because they're psychically linked, because elf twin, who knows? I guess they're just kind of linked like that, magic. Recognizes both of them are in danger, sees Nakari about to kill Tyrion and Alariel, just kind of magics him, Nakari, to death. And then they go on to either cut the Dark Elf invading army in half or blast them to hell with spells. Malekith and Marathi for his part, or their part. Teclis beats Marathi in a magical duel. And I think Teclis also nearly kills Malekith to the point that he flings himself into the warp to get away from him.
Oh, wow. That's drastic.
So, yeah. When Teclis is on his A game, he's very scary. It's just magical tuberculosis.
I just like the way it's just like, oh, hell is preferable to this. Off I go.
Yeah. Teclis, again, a bit more about him. Aside from those potions, he has a staff given to him by the elven goddess of magic, which certainly helps him be magic, but he also needs it to just walk.
Oh.
Like, he is a very, crippled elf. It's not great being Teclis.
Yeah. Is that why, in the trailer, does he have, a staff or something he's, leaning on? Is that,
yeah,
you can kind of see it a bit there.
It's equal parts, incredible, powerful magical artifact that takes his spellcasting up to a whole new level, and he's already a damn good wizard, and also just a cane. He just needs it to walk. But after this, Teclis has he is a pretty chill dude. Yeah, he is a cool guy. He realizes we can't keep just sitting on Ulthuan like this in between periods of tragedy. We need to actually start getting out there more and more. This is around the same time as the Great War against Chaos the Empire was going through. And Teclis goes to the Empire of Man and is like, listen, how would you guys like to actually have real wizards? And he founds the Colleges of Magic, basically sets up the way mankind uses magic in this setting. He's like, you just don't live long enough to be able to properly master magic like the elves do. It's like he's not even being like, you all just suck. He's like, you don't live long enough. Humans don't live long enough to be able to properly master high magic.
I would give money to see that first day of training with the first pupils, and then it's just all the elves okay, let's see what you can do, and all the humans are just slightly moving a rock with their magic powers. We've got a lot of work to do. It's they're bloody useless.
It was prior to this, magic was treated how psychers were on those planets that had those psyker witch hunts in the Age of Strife. Teclis was no, listen, if you train them, they're not just going to explode into demons. We can work with this. So he teaches them how to harness the 8 different winds of magic, helps mankind against chaos, and he just kind of travels all over the world to sites of magical power, doing stuff like that. The current Phoenix King, by this point, his name is Finnabar the Seafarer. He's a pretty chill dude. He actually also was I agree with Teclis. We got to get back out there. He's actually the first Phoenix King in thousands of years to be allowed into a dwarf hold. One of his things is we gotta, because he liked traveling. He visited the Empire. He visited all over the world and was they remember when humanity was just barbarians and tents? Yeah, they're quite a bit past that, actually, to the point that they're arguably surpassing us.
I like the idea he went on a gap year, and a gap year for an elf, and he was just it's great, you should check it out, it's awesome.
Pretty much. It was equal parts dude, this is fun being a tourist, and also, by the way, we kind of need them to save ourselves, because the world is getting scarier, and...
They've got wheels now, it's great. They can actually, move things properly. Oh, fantastic. They're not hitting each other with rocks anymore. Brilliant.
He showed back up and was like, listen, I'm also an elf. Not the biggest fan of guns. I like my magical bow and arrow. But they have tanks. Maybe we should ally with them. So
they've got armored divisions. Nice.
Yeah. So between them and Teclis, the elves start getting out there a bit more. And they're making friends again. Very slowly, especially like with the dwarves, who very long memories, and that book ensures they're not going to forget what you did. But the dwarves also have a bit of a relatively radical king, Thorgrim Grudgebearer. I was like, all right, you know what? Fine, we can work with you. I will not kill every elf I can on sight. You can come visit. We can fight beastmen together. You gotta leave after that, but we won't just behead you for being an elf. So it's like how, in 40K prior to the Great Rift, it's like everyone's getting real active. The time of ending's coming. Everything's coming together. It's like that, but with a bit more hope. It's like the elves are getting back out there. Sure, the dark elves, the orcs are rampaging, but the dwarves are marching, the high elves are going back at it. There's some hope. Then the end times. So we'll talk about elven characters first. I think I'll save Ulthuan for the last, because I just kind of feel like that'd be a better way to end off. Mostly talk about as a running theme, you'll notice when I'm talking about their characters, it's mostly the legendary lords from Warhammer.
So Warhammer, yep.
Yeah, but that's, to be fair, they picked the most important high elves worth knowing about for that. So, we'll start with Alariel. She is, as I said, the Everqueen of the elves, who just take a My Little Pony character, make them an elf, and give them just blood rage. Alariel is very peaceful. She's she's an incarnation of a nature, life fertility goddess. So she's a very chill person. She she does what's best for the world as a whole. Ulthuan, heal the world, nature, all that good stuff. Incarnation of a nature goddess. Sometimes nature's not very nice. Sometimes nature sends a tsunami to drown you. So when she takes, usually the Everqueens of past times it was a more passive role. Like they would tend the spiritual health of the elves, make sure Ulthuan itself, the land, was healthy. Alariel likes to get on the battlefield and just kill you, just kick your ass. At one point, she got into a tug of war with Slaanesh, not a champion, Slaanesh itself, over the soul of a Slaaneshi Chaos Lord who was invading Ulthuan. And she was winning, it's worth noting.
Yeah.
They was basically once she grabbed hold of the guy, he reverted from, super juiced up Chaos Lord and just an old man regretting all of his choices in life. Which was really just kind of sad. But she couldn't quite fully win. I believe what happened is she did save his soul, but when she let go, Slaanesh, all the attention she was pouring into the guy turned him into a super chaos spawn. And you had to kill that. But again, I think the fact that she played tug of war with Slaanesh and didn't immediately lose is a pretty good indicator of her power.
Yeah, sounds dangerous. Especially a tug of war with Slaanesh. Oh no,
magical, psychic, whatever tug of war. That's pretty impressive.
Don't have a tug with Slaanesh. Don't do it.
No, she's much more radical with doing things and just wants to, She's like, I'm getting out there. I'm part of the rebranding of the elves. We're not just sitting on Ulthuan anymore. We're getting out. We're going to fight. Next up is Imric. He is kind of generic as far as the legendary lords go, but to be fair, like all the elf characters, but someone's got to be the representative of the race guy. He's
Stoic.
What is it? He's like the standout ordinary guy. If that makes sense.
He's the most vanilla elf there is.
Yeah. He's someone has to be representative of the average elven lords and stuff. He's from the nation of Kalidor, who we don't know their original name, but they renamed themselves after, Kalidor 1, the vortex dude. And it is a very arrogant nation, to the point that the other elves say, "Calm down, you assholes, you're not that special." They don't care. Nice. But he, as part of the everything elves are getting back out there, he was like, well, we are very special. But if we just sit around Kalidor going, man, we're so special, we're not going to actually have any great deeds to prove we're special. So his reason for getting out there and killing people, and, glory to the High Elves, is, I need proof that I'm better than everyone.
I need validation.
To be fair, he is also the elves. The dragons, for the most part, are great friends with the elves. But they spend longer and longer slumbering. And usually an elf can choose to wake them up with a song, but it's a song that kind of drains their soul away. Kalidor is one of the only people left who can, or Imric, pardon me, is one of the only people left who can do that and not just kind of drop dead once the dragon wakes up. He rides on a dragon mount named something that starts with an M. Saying that name, I don't remember it, and by God, trying to pronounce it is not fun. So M. His dragon M. There's him. Again, nothing too special, but he's active if nothing else. He's doing things. We have Eltharion the Grim, who is High Elf Batman. He's the leader of the elf nation of Tor Yvresse, and if he catches you jaywalking in his land, he's going to throw you in his bat cave. He has a bat cave.
Yeah.
And torture you until you tell him why you're there. He will then kill you because this Batman doesn't have that whole thing about not killing. And when he was out and about, he killed so many orcs that he gave the elves a reputation for being a good fight.
Nice.
That they're all just sailing to Ulthuan now, and what few don't sink, because sailing to Ulthuan, if the elves don't want you there, is not an easy thing to do, very dangerous. He's just waiting on the shore to just kick their ass. This is also because he was raiding the Dark Elves, and while he was away doing that, the ghost of his dad informed him that a fat goblin was tearing the kingdom apart. Grom the Paunch, the biggest goblin ever. And when he got back, Grom had advanced so far in that he was destroying enough waystones that the world was kind of unraveling.
I just like the idea. It's like Dad just goes, there's a really fat thing. It's like, oh, kill it. Okay, Dad, no worries. I've got like a text almost.
It's actually I think I was reading before that he was described as he was a very charismatic, personable guy, but when he was dealing with Grom and the wizard, the orc wizard that was unmaking the world. They got a little bit of a ways into unmaking it, so he kind of stared into the abyss of chaos. And when he came back out, he became Batman. There's a one point he flew. He has a griffin mount. He flew on his griffin to help some other high elves like Tyrion and some others because they were childhood friends, helping him out. He just left without saying a word, and it said the other elves were I just wanted to catch up, man. Why'd you just leave? Eltharion does not care. He was out.
Wow.
So, very grim. He's also actually a retcon character. He used to be known as Eltharion the Blind because the Dark Elves took his eyes. But then he was kind of changed out to be the I Hate Orcs guy among the High Elves. The I Hate Dark Elves guy became Alith Anar. Now, he's one of the contenders for one of the oldest people in the setting. Because, like Malekith and Morathi, he's still the same Alith Anar from when they first split from the High Elves.
Right.
His shtick is that... Okay, so Conrad Kurz.
Oh.
Give him pointy ears and make him technically on the side of good. Very technically.
Does he have a closet full of, skin capes?
I don't think he has a closet full of skin capes, but I think that's only because the idea of wearing a Druchii skin, a dark elf skin, is enough to make him vomit.
Oh, okay.
It's not because he thinks that's disgusting. It's because he's Druchii skin is disgusting. I would never sully myself.
Orc, human, dwarf. Yeah, don't worry about that. Blech, not that one. No.
Yeah. And the kingdom he's from, which again we'll talk about in a bit, was the hardest hit by the Dark Elves, like seceding.
Mm-hmm.
He's got about 6,000 years of vengeance built up in him. To the point that the Malekith actually has a prophecy about him, where it will be like the firstborn son, sorcerer of a house that will kill him, which is why, incidentally, any male Dark Elf wizards just kind of get murdered, because Malekith's like, I'm not taking no chances with that prophecy.
Oh, effective, I suppose.
I mean, to be fair, he's been alive for a couple thousand years. Clearly, it's not working. But for Alith Anar is not a wizard at all. Like he doesn't use magic. Malekith's afraid of that guy. Like this is the Dark Elf Night Haunter, where you say his name and it's like, oh, this is a problem. You don't. If you're a Dark Elf, you don't want to get caught in an alleyway with him because he's going to turn you into a flag.
Yeah.
There's not too much to him, but it's just kind of like that level of, wow, you are psychotic to the point that it's impressive. A little bit of end times lore, which we won't cover too much of today, but a little bit of it for Alith Anar. He at one point, Malekith becomes the Phoenix King. All that crap that Eli's always on about is wrong. Alith Anar, for his part, shoots an arrow partway into his heart, and at Alith Anar's command, it will expand into like these brambles and like briar bushes that will instantly kill Malekith because there's not supposed to be plants in your bloodstream. And Alith Anar just says, "You're gonna behave, or I'm gonna snap my fingers, and I'm gonna go through with it." And there's no punishment for this because again, he's Conrad Kurz, just an elf.
Yeah.
So he's a little bit off the deep end, but
I mean, it can be fun to have characters that are just like, oh, they are technically kind of a good guy, but if they weren't on the side of the good guys, they wouldn't be a good guy.
The only thing you can say about him is that he points his anger at one of the most objectively evil races in the setting. If he was pointing at like the Empire or the dwarfs, they'd be like,
yeah,
you're just horrible. But he points it at the Dark Elves, so it's like, well,
Yeah.
I should also say, did you ever watch The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody? Do you know of that show?
I've seen memes of it.
Well, one of the actors in it, I believe it was Zack, Dylan Sprouse, voices Alith Anar. Which, for anyone who doesn't know that, but was a fan of that show, like I was as a kid, fun fact. No running in my Ulthuan. Yeah. And the last two, Tyrion and Teclis. Teclis, talked about a decent bit. Incredibly powerful wizard to the point that just if he, on a good day, he can just unmake a city. On a bad day, he's bedridden, has to drink potions, and if he doesn't have his staff with him, he's not getting out of bed. But he does get out there, and he was in Where Else, Andy? But Gotrek and Felix, he makes an appearance.
Nice.
And he has the common sense to be afraid of Gotrek, so this is already turning up his intelligence level significantly. He did not. He
Good.
went out. Gotrek still nearly killed him because elf, therefore bad, is about as far as Gotrek's thought process went.
Nice.
But Teclis was able to save Felix because they were in basically the fantasy webway, and Felix got a little bit lost. So Teclis helped save Felix, and then they spend the rest of the book just sniping at each other, just quips. And Felix has to play middleman, please don't kill each other. You're a powerful wizard. Gotrek is Gotrek. I don't know who's going to win the fight, but I know it's not going to be me. What was it? There was at one point, Teclis, again, he is pretty chill. In the game Total Warhammer, he gets relations bonuses with the races of men, the lizardmen, all the elves, because he's like a peacemaker. He tells Felix they're talking about the old ones and how the world came to form, and Felix gives him a good point, a suggestion, and Teclis is like, you know what? I never thought about that. That was a good one, Felix. He's, as far as elves go, he's very down to earth. He's very chill. And then his brother Tyrion, Tyrion likes 3 things in the world. He likes his brother. He likes 4 things, pardon me. He likes his brother. He likes Alariel. Mm-hmm. He likes his daughter with Alariel, which is breaking tradition a bit because Tyrion's not the Phoenix King, and the Phoenix King and the Everqueen are the ones who are supposed to have kids. But, Tyrion and Alariel just went at it, and now they got a daughter. And he likes killing... he just likes killing. He's shooting him just makes him angry. He has Anarian's armor. He has the sword of one of Anarian's friends. The way he got that sword, by the way, was he went to a museum the sword was held in and just took it. Never gave it back. Just took it.
Nice.
He's the High Elves are very political. Their courtly intrigues are like Game of Thrones, just with a little bit less bloodshed.
Mm-hmm.
Tyrion is like a bowl in a china shop when it comes to handling these politics. For example, one of his friends died in a battle against one of the enemies of Ulthuan, and his daughter, named Eldrya, I believe, wanted to become like Dad, and she went to the Phoenix Court and was like, I'm gonna be a general. I'm gonna be a princess, like a high elf princess. It's like the leader of the armies, and I'm gonna get out there. And then they kind of laughed her out of the court, and so she went to Tyrion. He was like, Uncle Tyrion, they laughed at me. And then Uncle Tyrion went into there, presumably holding the sword in hand, and was like, so she's gonna be my squire. She's gonna be a general. There's no issues with this, right? And then they all very politely clapped and said, yes, Tyrion, that's right, Tyrion. Do what you want, Tyrion. Please don't stab me, Tyrion, because I know you will.
Any questions? No, it's fine.
Yeah. Like every other elf character, Eltharion just doesn't care. Eltharion never leaves Tor Yvresse because he's very grim and he's seen what the Warhammer world is like beneath the surface. So he's very grim. But every other elf character is like, yes, we'll play the political game, we'll do this, we'll do that. Tyrion just kind of bulldozes through, and whenever someone takes issue with it, he either just goes, I'm the heir of Anarion, or just stabs them. Mm-hmm. So he just kind of does what he wants, which, to be fair, when he is on the battlefield, everything in front of him is not walking away. Tyrion and Teclis, when they're working together, opposing armies are probably not going to last very long because Tyrion is a warrior bar none, and Teclis is a wizard bar none. Excepting if the Slann, like when the few the only first generation and second generation ones remaining, unless they're around, you're not beating Teclis in a wizard duel, and unless Gotrek is around, you're not beating Tyrion in a straight up fight. So they are a very scary pair when they're working together. That's there's obviously there's more high elf characters, like there's Finnebar, cool dude, like I was saying, sails the world, getting the elves out there again, cool stuff. But that's kind of like the basics of like, here's all the high elf legendary characters of different flavors, they're worth noting. We'll cap us off. I'll just tell you a little bit about Ulthuan. After the sundering, it was going through it. It is divided into the 5 inner and outer kingdoms for a total of 10. And the inner kingdoms, for the most part, are like the nice, paradise ones. The outer kingdoms are a little bit more rough and tumble. Not quite as pleasant to be on.
But they're not like... I'm assuming they're not anywhere near as bad as like the Empire, where there's going to be ones like covered in smog and poverty. Like I assume even like the Eldar's like worse like districts are still pretty good, I would have thought.
There is one of the kingdoms is one of the worst places to be on the planet. I'll just level with you, but the rest of them are pretty nice.
Okay.
There's also the mountain ranges that divide the inner and outer kingdoms. Have a slight issue with monster infestations. So every now and then the high elves send an army to deal with them and come back down. It's not that big of a deal. It's just something they got to deal with every now and then.
Yeah.
But the kingdoms, we'll do the inner kingdoms first because they're the nice, peaceful ones. There's Eataine, which is where the city of Lothern is, which is the only place non-elves are allowed on Ulthuan, and it's just one of the biggest wonders of the world. There's statues of every single one of the elf gods lining the harbor. Even Cain, who's got a statue that's black with ruby eyes instead of the other ones are all nice marble and all the other gems. Cain's is a little bit edgier, but they do still have them there.
I like the idea that they're like, this is the only place that the outsiders can go, and we're just going to show off by having these massive statues of like, look how cool we are.
That is absolutely part of what it is. It's like, oh, you're going to see what we want you to see. We are giving you the full showboating treatment.
Yeah.
It is. It's like the trade capital of the world. It's the bases of one of the main bases of the High Elf Navy, which is also like it's the greatest one in the world because they live on an island. They kind of need to have a good navy. It's I think there's like a giant serpent that protects it. So if you're trying to invade, that's a problem for you. You got to deal with. And it's all just a generally very like, hey, this is a cool place to be. There's trade, museums, all the fancy elf stuff you can think of. You can find it somewhere in Eataine. And it's a nice place to be. Very temperate, very nice, lovely place. There's Calador, which is like I said earlier, the original name of it is no one remembers. They renamed themselves after Calador Dragon Tamer. And like I was saying with Imric, these elves are arrogant to the point that they make like their arrogance compared to the other elves is how elves seem compared to other like non-elves. They are insufferable to be around. They have a volcano known as Val's Anvil. There's also like 3 places in the Warhammer world known as Val's Anvil, by the way, one for each of the elf subfactions. This is the High Elf one that can make some of the best armor and equipment known to the world. It's called Ithalmar. It's like Mithril from Lord of the Rings, where it's super powerful, but just light as a feather. They're definitely very full of themselves, which, to be fair, if I was best friends with dragons, because this is like the sub-faction of them that uses dragons, I'd probably have a bit of an ego, But not too much about them. Imric, they like fire, they like their dragons, very, very arrogant, all that crap. Next up is Averlorn, which is where the Everqueen lives. It's the Garden of Eden to the rest of Ulthuan, which is already the Garden of Eden, where everyone frolics in the forest, and it's nice and lovely, and it's permanent springtime weather, but like the end of spring where it's warm and pleasant, and it's just great, and the elves sit around reading poetry to each other, and God, it's just the most sickening crap. How did this end up in Warhammer? I don't know, but it did. Like there's only one city here. The rest of the quote unquote cities in Averlorn are like just nomad tents. They just pack up and move whenever they feel like it. If you had to live in any Warhammer setting, you would want to live here.
Yeah.
Of course, there's also, because this is the seat of the Everqueen's court, there's the handmaidens of the Everqueen, which you hear handmaidens and you think, oh, they do her hair and all that stuff. No, this is the secret. This is the Inquisition of the elves, or at least for the Everqueen. If there was anything so much as a bit wrong in Averlorn, it's gonna disappear.
Yeah.
So again, it's very, very hippy dippy crap, but it's still Warhammer, so they still know how to fight. There's Illyrian, which is one of the cavalry. It's like the cavalry subfaction. The land is magic, and unless the land itself shows you the way, the longer you walk, the longer it's going to take you to get to your destination. You will get there when the land itself decides you're going to get there.
Oh, wow.
They're known for they're called Illyrian Reavers, because when Malekith was betraying, the High Elves, the people of Illyria, or Illyrian, would ride out, raid the Dark Elves. They would convince people who were still on the fence a bit to stay with the High Elves. They were out and about. They were very helpful in that. They're a light cavalry kind of deal. There's the last inner kingdom is Safari, which is the mandatory everyone here is a wizard, even the lowliest of peasant nation. To the point that like the idea that magic flows through the elves in Safari, that's not like just a saying because elves are good at magic. That's probably just true. Where every like trippy thing you can imagine is happening. Like every now and then there's just Aurora Borealis and the sky changes colors, and it's kind of like Illyrian. You just kind of start walking and know where you want to go. Like I want to go to that guy's house, and you'll get there when the land decides you're worthy of it.
Wow, meetings must be a nightmare. So I'll meet you at 2:00. Okay. 5 days later. Sorry, it wouldn't let me get here.
It's either a nightmare or everyone there is like Gandalf, and they're just like, a wizard is never late nor early. He arrives when he means to be, and they all just kind of have that attitude.
Yeah.
This is actually I misspoke a bit earlier. This is where the Elf Inquisition lives. They're known as the Sword Masters of Hoeth, as well as Lore Masters, where Sword Masters but like hero options upgraded. They train equal parts in sword and magic, and they root out any pleasure cults or such that might be rooting itself in the High Elves. They goes into detail. It's like because elves, especially in Warhammer, are functionally immortal. They will train for so long that they start taking the weight of their eyelashes into account with their sword swings.
Ooh, that's pretty cool.
To be fair, you live for 500 years. You got to start working on minute details like that because there's only so many ways you can swing through the air.
Although that must be a massive pain when it's like keeping your hair tidy. It's like you live for ages. You can grow your hair for like years on end, but it's like if you're worrying about the weight of your eyelashes, it's like, okay, I need to have like an optimal haircut. So one, it doesn't get into my eyes, but also it's not too heavy. Like, oh God.
Yeah, at a certain
counting every strand.
It has to be insane at a certain point with that. And yeah, they're like, the generic, the super bestest of the bestest wizards live here. There's it's what's called the White Tower of Hoeth, which actually has magical computers in it, which is basically you open a book, you tell the book what you want to read about, and it just flips to it, which is not the super most important thing, but it's pretty neat. What else? Around the White Tower of Hoeth is a maze that constantly shifts. And, of course, the maze is at least somewhat sentient, so if you go there with ill intentions, you're not coming out of that maze, ever.
Oh.
You just kind of vanish. It's also, fun fact, in Blood Bowl, this is the center of the Crystal Ball network that broadcasts Blood Bowl across the Warhammer world.
Oh, wow. So even when things are going terribly, there's at least some Blood Bowl going on. They're like, beam it out. Put it around there.
It's very nice. It's very fun. Blood Bowl is so goofy. One of these. I'm glad it exists, but it's so dumb.
Yeah.
And those are the inner kingdoms where things are generally a lot nicer. To be fair, we'll go through the nicer outer kingdoms. But first, between the inner and outer kingdoms are the gates of Ulthuan. So there's mountain ranges with only, I believe it's 5 passes between the inner and outer kingdoms. And there's also, you can go to Eataine to just sail in, but the harbor is guarded with all sorts of artillery and magical spells, so trying to get in through Eataine, first off, you need a big navy. Second off, you're probably not going to do it. Instead, usually you go through the gates, which are also very hard to get through. They're also, each of the gates is named after one of the mount options the High Elves have. So there's Eagle Gate, which is the southernmost one. Not super important, not too much goes on there. All of the gates, they are constantly invaded and they're dangerous to the point that, once an elf, is finished with their tour at the gate, they're one of the most respected members of society because they are the ones keeping the inner regions of Ulthuan safe. So Eagle Gate, not super important as far as the gates go. Griffin Gate, which is crowned by, 2 giant golden statues of griffins, which is attacked more than any of the other gates, but it's never been breached, so they're doing a good job. Unicorn Gate, which is the least attacked gate, because it's found at the end of a very dangerous mountain pass that they purposely keep infested with monsters. So anyone who tries to invade it needs to go through, the darkest dungeon before they can even get to the gate.
A trick of the light.
Indeed, it's
Love that game.
it's not the least attacked because it's the best gate. It's least attacked because it's just miserable to get to.
Yeah. And to be honest with, like, I like the idea of also, like, when they're trying to assault the other ones, like, oh, are you going to assault the Unicorn Gate? Nah, it doesn't sound very tough. Griffin Gate? Oh, I'll assault that. Yeah. That sounds manly.
Yeah. There's then Dragon Gate, which is the fanciest, the most grandiose gate, because it's got a dual function. So it's like it's partially gate to keep the bad guys out. It's also has living quarters for all of Ulthuan's nobility to retreat to in case there's a second great catastrophe. It's got the largest army of any of the gates. It's frequently attacked, but it has also never fallen, to the point that Malekith keeps sending dark elves at it whenever he invades to try and be like, yes, I finally made it fall. And then it never works, and he never learns. And the last gate, Phoenix Gate, which is the worst one to be stationed at, because it basically goes, they rebuild it, it gets breached, they rebuild it taller and better, and then it gets breached, and then it just repeat this. And it's to the point that the tallest spires and towers within it are probably as high as the mountains by this point, because out of spite they just keep building it bigger and better than it was before. So at a certain point, if the setting kept going on, I would be excited to see when they finally breach the stratosphere. They just keep building it up. And I know you're going to appreciate this. Stop me when this sounds familiar. The forces of the Phoenix Gate, despite it being a miserable place that you will probably die before you finish your tour, they're confident that everything is going according to their divine God's plan. They have the best armor and arms of all of the high elves. All of their ammunition is blessed straight from temples from their homeland and anointed with sacred oils and incense. Any of this sound familiar?
Is it gold? Do they wear gold?
I don't. They probably wear gold. This is where either the high elf custodians or space marines live, depending on if they wear gold. It's a miserable place. You're probably gonna die before you're done, but it's also, it's like representative, this is, the fighting spirit of the high elves. They're going down and they're taking a whole lot of people with them. And there's the outer kingdoms. I'll try and go from nicest to worst, because we pretty quickly get to the worst places. The outer kingdoms are not nice. First up is Chrace, which is it's Chrace for how to spell trace. I don't really know how to say it. I say Chrace. I just feel like that sounds better. It's like the backwoods. It's like the Appalachians. I don't know quite what the equivalent is over in England. It's like the backwood forests. This is where you go to get away from the all them city slickers. And then things kept going wrong. It's one of the outer kingdoms, and it's also one of the easier ones for the dark elves and the forces of chaos to reach. So the local elves there became very good at fighting. They have what's known as the White Lions of Chrace, and how you do that is there are white lions that live in Chrace. If you want to become a white lion, you need to get out there and kill one with your bare hands.
Nice.
So they're some of the bodyguards of the Phoenix King. They're just real good fighters. But aside from that, that's kind of their whole thing. They're woodsmen. Cut down the forest, live off the land. Not like Averlorn where it's all hippie. This is where the lumberjacks, the manly ones live. That's this kingdom. Then we have Kothik, which is mountainous, rocky, misty. You ever been to I guess someone compared it to, you ever been to the White Cliffs of Dover?
No, but I know of them.
That's Kothik.
Okay.
Misty, yeah, miserable. Has the best sailors in the world, period. Even the ones in Lothar and Eataine, these are the ones who actually go out across the world, to the point, like, if you want to leave Ulthuan, you go to Kolthik.
Okay.
The other elves kind of look down on them. They're like, yeah, you people
It's
are
a bunch of fishermen.
you fishermen. You're not sophisticated. And then, they conveniently forget this fact whenever it's time to leave Ulthuan for one reason or another. They get all the outside gossip first from the outside world. They have these just massive like fleets. They train their cavalry how to walk on the boats. So if there's a high elf boarding action, they're using horses to come and stab you.
Huh.
Which is pretty impressive. Their patron god is, the god of the ocean, Mithlan. Most of the other elves, like even the other like dark elves, are like, that guy's kind of an asshole. In Kolthik, they love the guy because sailing's their shtick. They're a big fan of the guy, and he does favor them to the point that one of the characters from Kolthik is his avatar in the end times, and prior to the end times, he kept getting into these massive sea battles where he would sink, and then he would just be fine. So like he would just wash up on shore and be like, well, I gotta get home now. So there's Kolthik. After that is Tiranoc. It used to be a very lovely place, and then Malekith did the funny and undid the vortex, and then half of it sank. And now there's all of these just drowned palaces and whatnot, which I think actually Kolthik also has, where like the spirits of high elves, whenever one of these provinces get invaded, like they take up spiritual arms and help defend the living. Tiranoc's a little bit more up and up about it. They're like their symbol is like a chariot wheel. They love chariots, and they view it as like what goes around comes around. We're gonna have our moment. We had our moment in the our time in the sun. Then things weren't great. You know what? Now we're on the up and up. So they're a pretty upbeat kingdom. Unfortunately, they are the closest to the Dark Elf lands, so kind of get invaded pretty frequently.
Once or twice.
Yeah, but, like I said, they're pretty upbeat about it. They're very they're like, yeah, you know what? It's not great.
Apart from the raiding parties, life is good. It's fine.
Yeah, you know what? It's not great, but by God, our time's coming around. It's not going to be miserable forever. They're very upbeat, which is an attitude I quite like. And not the most super important thing, but I'll send you a little image.
Okay.
The heraldry for Kolthik. That little symbol at the bottom. That symbol is what I paint on my Eldar.
Oh, nice.
It means so the High Elf language is all about duality. Like the word for wonderful is also the word for like catastrophic.
Oh.
So that symbol,
lovely.
I believe, if I remember, means both a storm that just scours the land, as well as a gentle rain that's just nice and relaxing, and like a nice little spring rain. Which I thought it's both suitably, to Tiranoc's attitude and very elfy. So naturally, I painted it all over my Wraithguard. Two left. Yvresse. No, I think Yvresse is the worst. The Shadowlands. You'll notice that's not a very elf-sounding name. That's just called the Shadowlands. It is officially named Nagaryth, unofficially Shadowlands, and it's the front line, basically, between the High Elf and Dark Elf Civil War, because it is where the Sword of Cain lies, that the Dark Elves want to just go and grab, and the High Elves don't want them to do that. And this is where Alith Anar is from, and all of the other elves, he's Conrad Kurz. The elves who live here are the rest of the Night Lords. They hate Dark Elves, to the point that every other elf nation will look at them and go, you are psychotic, and I don't want to talk to you. Yeah, you need help. And then they miss the point and go, I don't need any help. Look at how many elves I just killed today. I don't need help with this. It's barren. It's miserable. You don't want to live there, because if they're not being invaded by high elves, or Dark Elves, it's just miserable.
Yeah,
Uh,
I can imagine.
they're they're nuts. They're psychotic. They are, on the bright side, wonderful at rooting out dark elf spies and like any like scouting parties. You don't want to be alone with them at a bar because they're just kind of gonna sit there muttering about how they need to go kill more dark elves. Not very cheerful folk. Don't go to the Shadowlands. There's better places to go. It's even in Total Warhammer. It's the rest of Ulthuan is listed every province in the game has a terrain type. It's like grasslands, ocean, island, jungle. Ulthuan is all listed as the island terrain type. The Shadowlands are the wasteland terrain type. This place sucks. But it's not the worst, because that would be Tor Yvresse, or just Yvresse. Tor Yvresse is the capital of it. So take Kothique, where, it's misty, there's cliffs, it's, a little bit chillier, and then ramp it up to 100. The mist aren't just, hanging around the shore. They cover the entire landscape. Demons will just randomly manifest into Yvresse. The islands move and may or may not have minds of their own. There are no cities and towns in Tor Yvresse. There are citadels and forts. This place is miserable. It's what cities they have are almost entirely empty. Or it's if you look at Averlorn or Eataine, you're like, this is, the elves truly are a glorious people. You look at Yvresse and you're like, you have had your time in the sun and you are not doing very well right now.
Is it like when you're exploring an old fortress in Dark Souls and there's not really anything around, but they're quite grand but empty, and you're like, this is ominous and there's a lot of dead people here, or that kind of the architecture is very impressive, but also where is everyone?
when you beat the Iron Golem and you first have that overview of Anar Londo and the choir and strings are going. The rest of the kingdoms are that shot when it's oh my god, this this beautiful place. This is glorious and majestic.
Yeah.
And then Yvresse is when you start actually walking through it. You're like, this is empty and sad, and half of the people in here want to kill me.
And the Shadowlands is when you kill the fake Gwendolyn, and it's it's nighttime. Oh no.
Yeah. The elves here are very stoic, and they live in a place where they live in Cadia, kind of. Where, again, there's just kind of demons keep appearing, partially on purpose, because Eltharion made it so the orcs will invade this place first whenever they show up, because he really doesn't like orcs. So they run into demons and sea monsters and moving islands and stuff first, and he just sits there waiting for them in his dungeon, in his bat cave. And because they're constantly fighting them, they're very brave, grim, fearless, not great at parties, not very personable, but they're they're the ultimate line holders of the elves. They're going to hold the line like the guard, and they're just going to do their duty. It is a very grim, as of course their main character is named Eltharion the Grim. Not a fun place to go to, but the elves within it are probably the best, just standard soldiers. They're going to do their job. They're going to do what needs to be done to win, and not going to be pleasant, but they're going to do it. And I believe that was all. One last place is the Inner Sea, that has the Isle of the Dead in it, which is where the vortex lies. You go there, and it's kind of trippy. Obviously, you can see the ghosts of the dead. If you go far in enough, you can find the vortex, which the high elves probably aren't going to let you go far in enough to see the damn thing, because it's kind of important to the entire world. And it's just not pleasant, as you can guess from a place known as the Isle of the Dead. Lifeless plants and grass litter it, even aside from the vortex. Maybe you'll get swept in if you get too close. Maybe you won't. Depends on how the vortex is feeling. It's magic, so who knows? And not pleasant, but it is where reality itself is being kept, is keeping the magic that lets demons show up at will at bay. So no one lives here aside from those elves trapped in it to keep it going, but it is worth a mention because it keeps the world ticking.
Yeah. Sounds somewhat important to just a footnote. Like, yeah, just don't worry about that. Just you can't see it, but it is important.
It's like we assure you, it's important, but if you ever go close to it, we're going to kill you.
Yeah, just to be safe, just to make sure you're not going to like throw anything in there.
Yeah, and unless I'm missing anything, that's kind of the basics of the High Elves. As I said, towards the end of the setting, or I should say, the modern times of the setting, which unfortunately leads to the end of the setting. They were getting out there far more often, determined to save the world, and like I said, I think they're generally more competent than the Eldar, which is both an inherent feature of them, because the Eldar's whole thing is like, we are the remnants of an empire that had a catastrophic fall, whereas the High Elves, it's like, this is more of like a decline, but they're not, they're going down swinging, and if they can help it, they're going to have their resurgence. The Eldar, unless you're from Bealtan and gaslighting yourself, no, they don't have a chance in hell at getting their empire back. The High Elves are like, we're going to fight for it. We genuinely think we can get things back to how they were. Our golden age is coming back.
Yeah.
And they go out, they kick some ass, they go back home. Duty calls again. They got to go back out and go fight to the death again, and they do their part to keep the world going. Are they arrogant? Quite. But unlike the Eldar, I do believe they have a history of showing that they've actually kicked some ass. Like they've actually earned their position, their arrogance. And unless you have any questions, I believe that would be the High Elves, the Asur.
Okay, so I've got not exactly a question, but if someone was getting into, because I know there's like a kind of a resurgence with like Age of Sigmar, there's a new edition, and there's more renewed interest in fantasy these days. What would be the standout qualities which you think make the High Elves really cool as an army?
So from a lore perspective, I have to admit, I do not have the High Elf tabletop book yet, because they combined all of the old world armies into the Ravening Hordes and like Forces of Fantasy, I believe is the good guy book. From a lore perspective, it's kind of like, obviously they're elves, you get the graceful, elegant stuff like that. They're, like I said, especially because I feel like people are more familiar with 40k than as a whole. Fantasy, like you said, is getting a bit of a revived interest, so people might be more learning about it. From the lore, the High Elves are a lot more proactive, for one. Like, they'll go out of their way to go help the world, whereas the Eldar are like, is this worth it? Like, the Eldar, at the end of the day, feel like they want to be left alone. The High Elves are going to sail across the world to fight you. Like, they're far more proactive. They are going out to get things done.
Do they have a few books? Like, are they one of those ones where like they have more codexes than books, or do they have like a nice library of books?
They have a pretty decent library of books. For example, there's there's a whole trilogy, I believe, about the Sundering. Like when the Dark Elves were splitting. There's an omnibus that's just called Elves. And on the picture of it is just a High Elf spearman. So, yeah, you can probably guess what that one's about. There are books about the War of Vengeance, which I haven't read. I heard they're kind of middling quality. But they do have books. It's not like the Eldar, where it's like you have book. They have, like, series of books.
Yeah, like the Eldar, like, you have these books, and then there's these books you shouldn't bother with.
Yeah, like there's the Tyrion and Teclis, like they have their own omnibus of books, like just about the T-twins. There is an abundance of High Elf books and lore if you want to look for it. It's not just you have your codex, and then you have the canceled Ynnari trilogy, and then maybe the Path series, which isn't good. The High Elves, like, they do have like good books, bad books, which is fair. Not everything's gonna be a banger. So they've got there's also, that from the lore standpoint going for them. It's I don't know, it's nice to see they're also, this is kind of a more general thing that Warhammer Fantasies, like Order factions share compared to 40k. Over 40k, no one likes each other. Like the alliance with Eldar or Yvraine and Gilliman was, even then it's more like, we won't kill you when chaos is around.
Yeah.
But the elves do generally do their best to work with the other races, even the dwarves. Like I was saying with Finnabar, they're going out of their way to try and like rally everyone and be like, look, I know we have our differences, not the biggest fans of each other, but we're gonna work together. We're gonna do what we can to push back the darkness.
Nice.
So they are generally like good folk who go out of their way to do the best they can. Are they going to be arrogant in doing it? Yes, but I think they've earned it.
Yeah.
From a tabletop perspective, like I said, I don't own the book, so I'm just going to have to be going off of some stuff I've known is true from Old Fantasy. They have very high initiative, very good wizards. I believe they're the only ones that can take both high magic as well as all of the other, like, more traditional 8 winds of magic. So you got a lot of magical game you can play around with, and because their whole shtick is being wizards, they're good at it too. Like they're aside from the Slann, the best wizards in the game. And the way I think of it as, sure, you take a Slann, they're pound for pound a better wizard, and Empire wizards are probably cheaper. But High Elves are that perfect sweet spot between having options available to you and being good at it. They kind of like the Eldar. They hit pretty hard. They're not too tough in return, but a little bit less so pronounced. Like the Eldar are all about that alpha strike. They hit like a truck, but if you live through that first round, the Eldar are in trouble. The High Elves don't hit quite as hard, relatively speaking, but they can take a bit more of a punch in return. And I have to say, at least in my personal opinion, and this isn't even like I just like their models, I think some of the High Elf models have held up pretty well. Like all the fantasy models, you can tell, like, yeah, there's some of the older ones, but as far as the old fantasy ranges go, I think most of the High Elf models have held up pretty well. And they have confirmed that the High Elves are going to be one of the returning armies for the Old World. So, pick them up. They're one of the ones, like, first of all, you can collect them, and beyond that, I think they're some of the ones that have definitely held up a lot better than some of the other ones. Like, some of the dwarf models, they look a bit derpy. And, I guess some last things for the Elves is, I think their artwork in particular, I like it. Like, there's one I'm looking at now. I'll send these to you so you know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
There's a lot of different vibes you can go for. Like, here's one, you see Teclis at the front standing, where it's like the aurora in the background, and like you can see like they're very magical. There's one like the one that I always think of chiefly is with Tyrion is like the High Elf loading screen, where you can see like there's the glory of the High Elves. You see the line of spearmen leading out back. Some of their sword masters up close. You can kind of see Teclis and some other wizards a little bit behind Tyrion.
That line of the guys with swords is very Lord of the Rings to me, like the opening scene in Fellowship where they're all the elves are fighting with the humans, and then it's just like rows and rows of swords. Like, that's really cool. Yeah,
they've got like, you can get that vibe going. You can get a more like a wizardly magical vibe, but you can also make them like a ghostly vibe almost.
Yeah, like wraiths almost.
Yeah, like very wraith, which is also kind of Tolkien-esque, because I believe if elves don't go to the far lands, they turn into wraiths. So there's a lot of different vibes you can go for again with the High Elves. Like they've got something for everyone. Like that ghostly grim vibe with Yvresse, the glorious vibe, with Tyrion there, the magical of Safari. There's a kingdom and a vibe for everyone amongst the High Elves. There is always, I will admit, you need some interest in elves. But with that being said, I think as long as you don't despise them, I do generally believe they are worth a look, even if you don't like elves. For anyone interested, when the Games Workshop does re-release them in the Old World, there is something worth checking out. Like, if all you know about GW's elves is the Eldar, I promise you the High Elves are not the Eldar. They are very different beasts.
Yeah.
And that would be the High Elves. Have you any other further inquiries, questions, clarifications?
No, I think that was quite a good rundown of pretty much every element of being a posh elf, shall we say. The elves have all the regalia and all the finery. and gold ornamentation and funny hats.
That
was great.
They do have their funny hats, but I like the funny pointy hats. I don't. I know a lot of people don't. Oh, thank you, Pump. I like the funny pointy hats. What can I say?
Isn't there also that model that has like, is it an Age of Sigmar one where is it like a cow?
Oh, that's the Lumineth Realm Lords, which are like the reinterpretation of the High Elves, but they do have something more or less goofy. They have the Lothern Skycutter, which is a skyboat pulled by an eagle.
Oh, that's cool.
It is like the peak Warhammer. This is so stupid, but it's so awesome at the same time.
It's got that that Drukhari almost like fin on the bottom, just making like it's Eldar craft. It's got to have a fin, like bellows.
It is a skyboat that they will shoot at you from above with. I love it.
Just the dwarves coming in with their big airship going, look at that piece of shit. Look at this. Hey.
I get why people might not like it. I love it. It's so goofy.
Yeah.
But
other than that.
Did I achieve my mission statement, Andy? Can you at least look at them and go like, you know what? I get it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think the thing is they just inherently are a bit more likable in that, one, they haven't doomed their entire species, and two, they don't look down their nose as much to other species as, for example, the Eldar, who are just like, oh, Monkai, oh, here we go again.
No,
I like them. I think they're cool.
Yeah. They are still full of themselves, but to some, certainly, I think more than the Eldar, they've earned it. They were
still active.
They're still active, and one of two factions that, instead of damning the world, the galaxy with the Eye of Terror and Slanesh, they help save it. So they're a little bit cooler.
Just don't do what Teclis does and call a dwarf short.
I don't do that.
Especially Gotrek.
Don't be Teclis, because if you are Teclis, your life is pain.
Yeah, exactly. That's the moral of the story today. Don't be Teclis.
In the lore, his life is pain. In Total Warhammer, he's surrounded by the worst. Such standout hits include Skarbrand, Manfred von Karstein, all of the Tomb Kings. If you're playing with mods, Nagash. It is not fun to be Teclis.
Literally, the axis of Warhammer evil just all around you. Like,
Kairos Fateweaver is about 5 feet from his starting position.
Oh, great.
Don't be Teclis. If the moral of the story, if I haven't sold you on the Elves, I hope I've sold you on don't be Teclis. He's a cool guy handed a very bad hand of cards.
And he's playing them pretty good, but
he's playing them good
in the first place.
But everyone else around him has a full house, and he needs to bluff his way into being better than that.
Carl Franz starting next to the I guess it be is it Norska he starts next to? Not far. It's like, I've made an alliance. Ha 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 ha. Look at the elves struggling.
He's not too far from Norska, but he's also Festus, Kazrak. He's definitely got his own problems to deal with. I would rather take his problems than I would Teclis's.
Yeah, because Skarbrand's kind of scary.
Carl Francis' problems are, he's the problems of the world are at his doorstep, but he's got the nation of men at the heart of the world to push them back. And Teclis has himself and a couple other wizards and a can-do attitude.
Yeah.
That's what he has to deal with.
Well, I guess that's the end of the episode then. That was good fun. I will say we haven't done one of these in a little while, so please let us know in the comments if there's a faction you would like to see in particular. I think with this one, I just mused with Colin and said, what do we want to talk about and see what we did. I think we had a few comments about elves, but...
We did. One last piece that I can't believe I almost let slip by.
It
is canon.
Okay.
That the Knights of Bretonnia are entirely based on High Elf Silverhelm Cavalry. So they are all LARPing as their betters. I could not let that one slide. I'm glad I remembered
And this episode is exactly following the Bretonnia video. I didn't realize. So Couldn't let that slide.
There's my mandated slander.
Yeah, wouldn't be the same without it. But yeah, thanks everyone for watching. We hope you've enjoyed this episode on the Elves. We'll be going back at some point with the other two main factions, I suppose. But yeah, let us know in the comments about what you want to hear us talk about next time. And we'll catch you on the other one. Have fun, everyone.
Have a good one, everyone. Take care.